Welcome back to Activated Mornings right here on WFM 99.9. It's 8:01. That's the time this morning, and you're listening to WFM 9.9. Now, the number to call is 457-9997. The number to WhatsApp is 457-9994. On Friday mornings, we're normally joined by Mr. Kingsley Freitas, and he's here with us. He's here. And we're going to take you up until 9:45. My name is Christal. All right. And in studio this morning, we've got Mr. JOMO Thomas. He's attorney and former Speaker of the House of Assembly. Good morning, Mr. Thomas, and welcome.
Good morning, Christal. Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning to Kingsley.
All right. It's a pleasure having you here. Now, what we're going to talk about is the most recent ruling made by the High Court concerning the quote-unquote vaccine mandate that just concluded on Monday. Following that, we heard responses from the government side. We also heard responses from some of the teachers. I looked at the video yesterday where one of the teachers was actually in school. So she reported for duty as was directed to her. Now, I think we should go back a little bit and explain a few things because there are some terms that were stated in news articles that some of us may not quite understand. So let's go back to the beginning just a little bit.
Sure.
Now, if you could just explain to us the purpose of appealing, and even if the High Court has made a ruling, sorry, how do we move from a ruling to appealing? And then is there a next level if the appellate court makes a judgment that is not in agreement? Is there another step above that?
Right.
Take us through that process.
As you correctly said, on Monday, Justice Esco Henry, the High Court judge here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, made a ruling which says that the vaccine mandate that was initiated by the government back in November of 2021, she ruled that the vaccine mandate was unlawful, unconstitutional, ultra-virus, disproportionate, and tainted by procedural impropriety. Those were the fundamental bases upon which we approached this claim. We had a constitutional dimension to the claim, and we had a judicial review dimension to the claim. And the fundamental points in judicial review are illegality, disproportionate action, and procedural impropriety. So in essence, what the court did was to embrace the arguments which we presented to it and to completely reject the arguments which were presented by the government. So once that decision had been handed down, we heard within seconds after the decision, the government side saying that it intends to appeal. Well, when the government appeals a decision or expresses an interest to appeal a decision, the decision of the court stands. And that's the law in St. Vincent at this point in time, that the mandates were unconstitutional, illegal, ultra-virus, disproportionate, and procedurally improper. They now have to apply for a stay in the decision of the High Court judge. And this stay, which they are making the application for, would be heard by judges from the Court of Appeal. We intend to vigorously oppose the stay, but in the event they get the stay, all that means is that the status quo, which obtained before Justice Henry's decision, would remain in place until the Court of Appeal rules on the appeal, which will be filed. In fact, we saw on the portal, the electronic portal of the court yesterday, that they actually filed an application, a notice of appeal. If the Court of Appeal were to reverse Justice Henry, and it is highly unlikely, and I'll tell you why later on, then the government can always appeal to the Privy Council. But we are saying now that based on the broad-based embrace which the Justice Henry had for the arguments made by the petitioners in this case, I would say there's really no need for appeal. I mean, if you listen to Prime Minister Gonzalez, or if you listen to Senior Counsel Tony Astafan, a man that I have tremendous respect for as a counsel, he has not, neither of them have pointed to any point of law which they thought the Justice Henry got wrong. Because it was amazing that they are so strident in the arguments about an appeal, firstly, because they haven't read the decisions yet. They don't know what are all of the points. I mean, they have the order, but they don't have the reasoning. But they have said, they haven't brought any legal argument before. They says, oh, it would be reckless not to appeal in the public interest. But that is not a point of law. You see what I'm saying? The fundamental points of law in this case was that when the government, through 28 of 22, SRNO 28 of 2021, instituted 8.1 and 8.2 of that act, which called on teachers and public employees to do a particular set of things. We said that those things were illegal, were disproportionate, were procedurally improper. Those are what the courts agree with. So, and this is why, for example, we had a huge sigh of relief in St. Vincent, and I'm sure you and Kingsley felt it when the decision came out on Monday. There was not a strong sentiment that said this must appeal. The sentiment was, wow, the court ruled, and the court ruled in a particular way. And people thought that that may have been the end of it, but certainly it is not. But in any event, I can tell you, and I can speak with a certain amount of assurance here, that if and when this matter goes to the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal would uphold Justice Henry's decision.
Okay. Now you mentioned a stay, and that's been circulating with us every story that's written about this case. What is a stay?
Well,
An application for a stay. What is that?
A stay is where the losing side in a legal action files an application to the court saying that we have a strong case here. There's a strong likelihood that we would succeed, and we want you to hold the decision which was made by the lower court so that we can get an opportunity to present legal arguments which would convince a higher court that the lower court had ruled improperly, illegally, wrong. So that's what the stay would essentially hold the status quo that existed before Monday's decision. So the question as to whether government acted properly when it declared a state of emergency, when it demanded that workers take vaccine at pains of losing their lives, at pains of losing their jobs, that would remain in effect if they were to get a stay. But as I said, we would oppose the stay because there's really no need for any stay. They don't have any legal ground upon which they're arguing. What they do, they present emotive arguments. And that was evident in the case as well. And for those of us who are attorneys and who are on our team who are listening, we were really smiling because this argument which they sought to present to the court was that, oh, this is a pandemic and the government have to respond to a pandemic to save lives or to prevent people from going to hospitals. There was never an argument, at least we never presented an argument which said that the government could not respond in an emergency. Our argument was that their response was improper. Their response was illegal. Their response was unconstitutional. And none of those, if you listen to Ken Gonzalez or if you listen to my brother and my friend Tony Astafan, none of those legal questions were raised. They say, oh, I heard Prime Minister Gonzalez say he thinks the decision is wrong, but that's a mere assertion. He could always say it's wrong. He can continue to say it's wrong from now until the end of time. But you have to prove to the court why the decision is wrong. And I'm saying that they have a high mountain to climb to establish to a court of law, to a court of appeal, that Justice Henry was wrong in law.
Okay, so essentially, the stay does not always have to accompany an application for appeal. Two separate things, two separate
if you
conversations.
don't, if there's a decision of a lower court and you intend to, and you appeal it, and you don't apply for a stay, then all of the orders and declaration of the court below should be carried out, because you don't have a. The only thing that can stop the operational of declarations or orders by a lower court is to apply for and get a stay of execution. Without a stay,
Okay.
Justice Henry's,
So as it stands, there's no stay.
Justice Henry's ruling is the law of St. Vincent and the Grenadines as it stands now.
Okay. So that rationale behind the teachers and all other events being told to report to duty the following day, which would be
Right.
Wednesday,
This is why
there was a halt,
teachers,
and yesterday and today.
yes, the unions have taken the view that since Justice Henry ruled that they were, is, and remain employees of the state, therefore, once that decision was made on Monday, the unions took the position that they must report for work. And that's what you saw a lot of them did yesterday. Teachers reported, police officers reported, people in the medical field reported, people at court reported for duty. Because that's what the court said. The court said, look, you never lost your job. In fact, the court has made a similar ruling before, In the Otto Sam case, you may recall that the court ruled that Mr. Sam is and always was a teacher. So consequently, for all that time that the government had thrown him out of his job, they had to pay him in the same way in which they would have to pay all of these teachers and all of these public workers for all of the months. It's 16 months now and counting.
Okay. Now, when you say all, the story that I read, the claimants, the list was about 8 or so persons. Does that also include all the other public servants or just those?
Right. I'm glad you asked that question, because I heard somebody saying there are only 9 claimants. No, there are numerous claimants. So, for example, there was actually two claims in one. There was a constitutional dimension and there was a judicial review. So the persons who were applying for judicial review were, there were 6 of them. There were 6 of them. And in the constitutional claim, there was Chef Lon Ballantyne, Travis Cumberbatch, and Rohan Giles. But they were representative of all of the workers who were dismissed, were thrown out of their jobs. So those 3, Cumberbatch, Ballantyne, and Giles, they were just the names, the front for all of the other workers who were thrown out of their jobs. So it's not 9 persons, it's actually hundreds. Okay. Are you with me?
Because I recall the video. Yes, yes, I'm following. Sometimes it dips out a little bit, but I hope that listeners are able to pick up as well. Because yesterday's video with Ballantyne, she stated that there were 20 or so others outside of the ministry. Now, let's speak a little bit about the process. So, were they supposed to turn up to their place of employment, or were they supposed to go straight to the Ministry of Education?
No. They were supposed to go to where they worked. In fact, a number of them went to their place where they formerly were, and they were directed to go to the ministry. But you see, this is why the government always gets in a tangle, and this is why the government always loses these claims when it comes to judicial review. Now, a lot of the workers were told the Attorney General sent out a directive that says you must do this. But the Attorney General didn't employ them. I could have seen it is the Public Service Commission or the Police Service Commission that has authority over these things. So when you say the Attorney General say, the Attorney General cannot direct a worker what to do because the Attorney General does not employ the public employees. But the government always gets it wrong because, well, the sad thing is that none of them know the first thing about judicial review. Because if they knew what judicial review was all about, they would not be acting in the way in which they acted. They have had the Otto Sam case in which they could have learned something. They did not. They had the Bash Thomas, Johnson, and Daniel case for which they could have learned something. They did not. They had the Jamali White case of the young man from Union Island. The government wanted to arbitrarily move from Union Island and bring him up here to Maritime. They did not. They had the case where the Public Service Union brought a claim regarding promotions and how it should go on and the things that must be done where Justice Henry ruled that they have to do things in a particular way. They have not learned. In fact, the person who had the Public Service Commission at the time simply told the unions when they went in for a meeting, we are not going to do that. So that's the difficulties they have. In fact, I remember when Senior Counsel Astafan was speaking on Wednesday morning, he says that he expects the government, if they were to go to the Court of Appeal and lose, he expects the government to accept the ruling because the government has always done so, because the government believes in the rule of law. Well, unfortunately for Senior Counsel Astafan, he lives in Dominica. He does not live in.
He expects the government.
If they were to go to the Court of Appeal and lose.
Okay, so the connection dipped out for a bit. If you can just.
I didn't hear what your question was.
He expects the government. After that, I didn't hear that one.
No, I was saying that Senior Counsel.
The connection dipped out for a little bit. Mm-hmm.
I should what?
Go ahead. There's a lot. Go ahead.
I was saying that on Wednesday, when Senior Counsel Astafan was on another program, he says that he knows that this government believes in the rule of law and that they would accept the decision of the court if they were to go to the Court of Appeal and lose. But I was saying in response to that is not true. This government does not believe in the rule of law because there are many cases in which this court or the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, whether the Court of First Instance or the Court of Appeal, has ordered this government to do certain things. Whether it made declarations of what the government should do, it issued cost orders as to damages, and the government don't bother. The government remains in disgusting contempt of the court. So they don't do what the court ordered them to do.
And you're saying that based on past events?
Yes, I'm saying based on history, recent history, the statement by Senior Counsel Astafan does not hold up to scrutiny.
Okay. If we're in a position where the government has appealed the ruling, what would have been the implications of that? Would it have translated to becoming a public law?
If the government did what? Your voice was kind of garbled. I didn't hear you.
Okay. If the government had not appealed the ruling made by the High Court, what would have been the position today, the implications of the ruling that stands today? Would it turn into or translated to a public law?
Well, it is public law as we stand now at this minute, at this second. It is public law because the ruling which was issued by the court is instantaneously law in the country where that ruling comes. The government expresses an intention to appeal, but the mere fact that it expresses an intention to appeal does not put the ruling of the court in any lower position or lesser position. Justice Henry's decision is the law of St. Vincent and the Grenadines as it stands now. They would first, for that not to be the case, they would first have to get a stay. And we haven't gotten to the point of a stay because we don't even have the decision, the completed decision of Justice Henry as yet. All we have are the rulings, the declarations that the court made. But Justice Henry has to perfect her decision, and then she would issue it. And I can tell you, it is going to be a pretty long decision. She did say that, but she had 13 issues that we raised that she has to address. And there were mountains of cases, thousands and thousands of pages of case law that she has to read through. So she had to read all of that and put all of that to support her decision. And I'm sure she would come up with some cases of her own. So that is going to be a fairly extensive decision, probably hundreds of paragraphs, I would assume. And then they would have to read that and walk their way through to see what they are appealing. And this is why I said that I cannot understand. I could have understood if they said, well, we understand the decision of the judge. We are going to await the delivery of the decision. We would walk our way through it, we would read it, we would study it, and then we would file an appeal. But to say that you are filing an appeal even before you have a chance to read the decision is politics rather than law.
Okay. You said before that the appellate court is highly unlikely to reverse the ruling. What are your reasons for saying that?
Okay. Now, the court, the arguments that we made before the court, I'll give you an example, is that the workers did not abandon their job. And there's a legal understanding of what the word abandonment means. In this case, the government told the workers, take the vaccine or don't come to work. And when those workers who did not take the vaccine went to work, the government says, if you come here, we are going to arrest you and we are going to punish you. There's a case called Suraj out of Trinidad that went all the way up to the Privy Council. In fact, when the case was heard in Trinidad, Justice Buddha Singh says, you cannot, in this context, have criminal sanctions for people who may violate the law. The government still insisted on arguing that people here would suffer criminal sanctions. The matter went all the way up to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council supported Justice Buddha Singh's view that you could not hold criminal sanctions. But there's an understanding as to what abandonment is. And then we also argued that the Public Service Commission and the Police Service Commission slavishly applied the orders, the dictates of the government. And in their very affidavit, we were able to point the court to their very affidavit, the affidavit of Mr. Colin John, the affidavit of Mr. Stephen Williams of the Public Service Commission, Police Service Commission, which showed that they, in their own words, said what they did in clear violation of the independent authority which the Constitution gives to them to act. They surrendered it. They slavishly surrendered it. It is highly, and we cited to the case of Endel Thomas out of Trinidad, another Trinidad case that went all the way up to the Privy Council, where the Privy Council in that case, in the Endel Thomas, was the Attorney General of Trinidad, said that One of the reasons why the Public Service Commission, Police Service Commission was created was to insulate the process of hiring and so on from the political establishment. But here in St. Vincent, what the government did was to order the Public Service Commission, the Police Service Commission to do a particular set of things. And they did it. The court is not going to overturn those. They passed a law, Public Administration Miscellaneous Act, in clear violation of section of the rulemaking, the constitutional rulemaking authority. Section 37 says the legislature must do a certain thing. They passed a law that said that they can amend any law. Think about the dangerous slippery slope that is. That they can amend any law, they said. And Justice Henry said that is improper. It is highly unlikely that the Court of Appeal would say that was proper. So that, as I said, that's the ocean they have to swim across in order to get this Court of Appeal to overturn those decisions. And I'm saying to you now, and I'm saying to all Vincentians who are listening, as Prime Minister Gonzalez is fond of saying, you could put your pot under fire with the assurance that this case going to the Court of Appeal would not be overturned. What PM Gonzalez is doing is spiteful, it's vindictive, it's vainglorious, it's arrogant. What he really wants to do is to prolong the mental health crisis which his policies have created in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And people shouldn't allow it. The Christian Council, civic society, all of the trade unions, the radio personalities like you, the people who write the editorialists in the newspapers, the columnists, all of them should write and tell Gonzalez, look, stop the nonsense. The people have exhaled, and you should let them go about their business. I heard a strange argument last night that if the government were to pay these workers, it may amount to millions of dollars. Well, this is the people's money. Assume that Jules Williams tells you, Christal, don't come to work. And you don't come to work for 12 months. And he did not offer a good reason for you not to come to work for 12 months. Well, you stay at home, you take care of your child, and you do whatever you have to do. And then you come to somebody like me, we take him to court. The court would tell him, you better pay her 12 months. It matters not that you were not there, because you were willing and ready and able to come to work. He told you not to come. Now, sir? He told you not to come.
You're the lawyer.
So, yeah.
You're the lawyer.
Well, it's true.
All right. This is rather interesting. Okay, so appeals can go on for some time. And because the government has not gotten approval or acceptance of this application of stay, and you mentioned that even if that goes ahead, that you are going to object that. How long do you think that this can go on for? Well,
look, I think that is what PM Gonzalez is doing. He wants to play a long game. Because you know what is funny? And I almost missed this point. Before Monday, PM Gonzalez was telling the people, look, come back to work. The case is in there. You have already filed a claim. Come back to work, do your work. If you prevail, then the court tells us what to do. If you don't prevail, we would have already re-employed you anyway. Now that the case is adverse to him, he now tells the workers, stay off the job until the case is decided. You see how cynical that is? That was an intent. That call was an intent to split the solidarity of the workers with their unions. You wanted to tear them apart. Now that the unions supported the workers and they prevailed in the court, he tells them, don't come back to work. Stay over there and wait until we finish this appeal. You see the cynicism? And you see why these guys should be punished?
But aren't those two different? Aren't those two different things? Are they two different things? Prior to Monday, the call back to work wasn't that a reason? Did you get me?
No, you broke up. You froze for a minute. You were saying it's two things, but I didn't hear why you were saying it's two
Okay.
things.
Oh, dear. If it's two different things, the call back to work prior to Monday, wasn't that an application for employment? And Monday's reinstatement.
But that's the point. The government was playing politics with the workers. Tell them, come back and apply for your job. The court said they don't have to apply for the job, they never left. Consequently, why not let them come back? Because the case would be decided anyway. You want them, you are employing them to come back. Why now tell them they must stay out? Because in any event, one way or the other, if you want to engage them in a new contract, or if, as the court said, they never left, even if you were to appeal all the way to the Privy Council and lose, then the workers will be back in their jobs as you were telling them to do in the first place. You meaning the government. I mean, I don't understand.
All right.
I don't understand how the younger guys, in the ULP, Camilo and Soboto and Kizal, how they sit in a cabinet meeting and let Gonzalez, who's at the end of his political career, torpedo their future. They should get up in a cabinet meeting on Wednesday and say, look, boss man, stop being silly. Just bring the people back to work and let's move on. Why are you going to prolong this up to close to another election? Why? It's stupid. And none of them have the testicular fortitude to look the man in the eye and say, stop being stupid and vindictive and vainglorious. None of them want to do that.
Wow. Is this a costly venture going forward? How costly is it on your side?
Well, that's another calculation I think Gonzalez is making, right? Because he doesn't have to pay. It's our money that he's using. And I have said before, and I'll say it again. If PM Gonzalez and his finance minister, his son Camilo Gonzalez, had to pay this money out of their own pocket, they wouldn't do it. So they're hoping they could do the long game with the unions, and that the unions don't really have money. And for all the talk you hear people talk, the kind of work that we put into this case, and the kind of fees that these kind of cases attract, this is what we're engaging in here, is a labor of love. You see these puffy eyes? That's for all of those cases we had to read over all of these years. Over all of these months. It's serious, serious work. But they're hoping that they can run us ragged or run the unions out of steam. But it would not happen, because this is about workers, this is about democracy, this is about the people, this is about St. Vincent, this is about the future. If we allow these autocratic, undemocratic, dictatorial policies to go on, St. Vincent would be a worse place. And this is why I constantly say, and I'll say again here in your program, that had it not been for the leadership of the Public Service Union, the leadership of the Teachers Union, and the erudite intellectuals who sit on the Eastern Caribbean Court of Appeal, St. Vincent would have been a hellish place. Well, much more than it is now.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you to repeat that, right? If we allow, after you said, if we allow, it cut out for a little bit. So I need you to repeat that part there.
I was saying, if we will allow these kinds of policies
I
to
froze
go
again.
through,
Can you repeat it?
if we will allow these policies to maintain, St. Vincent would be these undemocratic, autocratic dictatorial policies to maintain or to continue, St. Vincent would be a very hellish place. In fact, much more difficult than people are experiencing now. And I pay tribute to the leadership of the Public Service Union, the leadership of the Teachers Union, the members who stood steadfast and supported them, and the judges of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, because they have been true to the law. Justice Tom before, Justice Henry, and now Justice Henry, and the judges on the Court of Appeal.
Okay, so there's a question coming in from a listener, a question for the ex-Speaker of the House. If you were called to represent the government in the appeal of the current ruling of Judge Henry in regards to the civil servants lawsuit, would you?
No. My side is the other side. What are you going to do? I'm going to win a case and then turn back and try to have it overturned. I wouldn't do that. I don't see that. That's not ethical at all. But in the first thing, if I were to assume that I had not been on this case and I had a chance to follow it as I did, and I had a chance to see the rulings of the court, I would have advised the court, the government, not to waste the people's money, because there's no public interest in an appeal. Because as I said before, the court did not say that
That's not what they said.
The court did not say that the government cannot respond in an emergency. The court says your response must be legal, constitutional, proportionate, and procedurally proper. That's what the court said. And the court, Justice Henry, in her decision, was saying to the Ralph Gonsalves regime that your actions were illegal and unconstitutional and disproportionate and procedurally improper. That is not to say that they can't engage the country in doing things that has to do with an emergency. They could do emergency anytime. That, in fact, the Constitution, Section 17 of the Constitution, allows them. It's a legal gateway to engage in emergency actions. They chose not to do that and to legislatively introduce into the Public Health Act a section called Section 43B. And the court said, look, you could do that. The court said you can have parallel legislation or parallel gateway to emergency procedures and action. The court didn't say they couldn't do that. What the court said was wrong was how they did it.
Okay. And that was explicit.
Explicit, yes. The court said we make no pronouncement.
Okay. No,
in fact, I can read it for you if you want me to read exactly what Justice Henry says. In Section 4 of her decision,
right,
Section 3, she says, no declaration is made that Section 43B of the Public Health Act, insofar as it grants power to the minister to declare public health emergency, is inconsistent with Section 17 of the Constitution, or is it null or void? No declaration is made regarding SRNO 38, which was the 30th of 2020, which was cited as the Public Health Emergency Act, which was made under Section 43B of the Public Health Act, is inconsistent with Section 7. In other words, she's saying, yes, you can do what you did. We are not saying that it was void. We are not saying that is unconstitutional. What we are saying, in declaring the public health emergency, what the court says, what you did was illegal. What you did was unconstitutional. What you did was disproportionate. For example, in Trinidad or in Grenada, the government didn't dismiss anybody. Some people were retired in the public interest. So in some countries, some people were placed on no-pay leave, and so on and so forth. This Prime Minister Gonsalves, as the Ayatollah, as the Caribbean Ayatollah of vaccine policies, decided he's going to go all the way. And you know why it is even more cynical, Christal? Because in 2020, he's the one who said, so what happened when a popular man died in a village? What you gonna do? You gonna send an email? All I forget that. And then by 2021, when some people start coming down on him and probably making offers, he went 180 and became engaged in the most draconian policies across the region. Remember, St. Vincent imposed the vaccine mandate in November of 2021, the same month that Gaston Brown had done away with them. Gaston Brown of Antigua.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that people remember those things. There's no other country in the Caribbean that did what Prime Minister Gonzalez did.
Okay. Now we got 2 minutes. We have to wrap up. So if you can share your final thoughts with us, please.
Well, everything I said were final thoughts. But just to reiterate that the decision, just to reiterate that the decision of Justice Henry is going to be upheld. It's going to be found not to be violative of any of the rule-making authority that she has. And I really hope that the persons who have opinions in St. Vincent could reach out to Prime Minister Gonzalez and say to him, look, let our people go. Leave them alone. Let them get a chance to breathe. Let them, after all of the things that we went through in the last 2 years, we had dengue epidemic that took the lives of 13 precious ones. We had the volcanic eruption. We had the vaccine mandate, that the attempt to economically assassinate people by telling them, look, you have to take this vaccine or we are going to fire you. All of that created serious mental health issues in St. Vincent, which are continuing and which may well continue for some time. So people like you and others, please lend your voice out there to galvanize popular support, which would say to Prime Minister Gonzalez, enough is enough. Abandon this appeal and let this country.
All right, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. JOMO Thomas. I hope you have a wonderful day today. Thank you for your time.
I hope you do likewise.
All right. Thank you very much. All right.